assuming all other classes is the one they need to be logged into. I don't know. So there's Eric, there's Shantia, yeah. There we go. We're all in now. And you wanted to share this. Yeah. Yep, here we go.
Okay.
You bet. We have 7 people on the Zoom now.
Okay.
This thing, I don't want this to be in your way. But this bar has got to be somewhere. So maybe up here is best.
That sounds scary.
Okay, I think we'll get started. Hello to everybody in the room and on Zoom. My name is Kelly Carr. If I don't know you, I work for Team Lucky Duck in their operations department. I've been here for 6 years now. And if you have worked with me in the past or know me, you know that I like things to be, I always say accurate, efficient, and there to be a process. So when we're talking about Transaction Desk, it is a tool that allows us to kind of meet those goals when we're doing paperwork. So for us, I work on a team, so I will probably talk most from a team perspective, but I think it's also super useful for solo agents because it allows you to create a system in place and a process to follow to make sure that all of your paperwork is similar in nature, right? Like everybody's gonna have different terms, you might have different contingencies, you might have a different clause here and there, but in terms of how you fill out paperwork, you can create a template, and then for the most part, most of your paperwork will align with that template. And so you can be sure that even if you're writing an offer at 10 o'clock at night and you have screaming kids or it's the middle of bath time, whatever, that some of those things that you always write in a PA will be there because you're using your templates within Transaction Desk. So we are going to talk about, I'm sort of doing this a little bit funky so that we can do both, like look at this PowerPoint and also actually do Transaction Desk together. So sorry for the split screen. I will do my best to like navigate appropriately, but I thought this might be the best way to do it. So we'll talk about setting up your dashboard on Transaction Desk if you haven't been in there and don't know what it looks like or how to make it, sort of custom to what you use with it. We'll do that. We'll talk, the bulk of this class will be about transaction templates and how to set those up, get the right forms in the right transaction folders, and then how to edit those forms with I always call them like your static items, the things that are, pretty much the same on every PA, or the vast majority of the PA or listing contract or buyer representation documents that you would write. And then we'll talk about how the clauses work. That's a new feature and one of my favorites this year. And then we also will show how to have your clients edit the seller's disclosures so you can share it with them and then they can fill out the form and then you'll have access to it on the back end. And you can do that with any form that you want to, but most commonly is the seller's disclosure. So that's what we're gonna do. And we'll create a buyer consult packet, a listing consult packet, or listing appointment packet, however you wanna talk about that, and then your offer packet. You'll see when we dive into our team's Transaction Desk, we have 3 offer packets. We have a conventional offer, we have an FHA offer, and we have a VA offer. We traditionally do mostly either conventional or VA offers, but we have all 3, especially for FHA because it has some of those extra things that you need to fill in, and so I don't want to forget those when team members are writing those offers. But it's up to you. Like if you do a lot of land listings, maybe it makes sense to have a land listing folder as well, and then you could do the same process that we're going to do with these three. But I think these are the most commonly used, and then you can kind of customize from there. I wrote a why slide because, like I said, I like process and systems, and so I said that we can write a purchase agreement in 10 minutes, and I think that's probably true with templates. So when you're thinking about, okay, you've talked to the client, you have their terms, how long does it take you to send it off for signing? With templates, it's very realistic on our team that that takes about 10 minutes. It shouldn't take much longer than that. And then we also talked about prepping a listing. That should be about a half an hour project to get everything, the input form, listing contract, all of those forms created and adjusted before you go on the listing appointment, and then check through everything. But those sort of like the places to start from the last listing and tax records and those sorts of things. So I love being efficient with time, and then accurate. We talked about this, you'll have the correct forms needed for every transaction, and then it limits the room for just mistakes. It's not fail-proof. Still need to think about every line of the purchase agreement. You still need to review it with your clients. But it's not like, oh shoot, I meant to, and I forgot, because it's already there. And so it kind of limits some of those pieces. And then consistent. So especially for our team, this is my probably number one sort of goal that we meet with transaction templates, and that is that the contracts are written in a similar manner. So if we have a clause about appraisals, everybody's clause about appraisals is the same. Or if you're a single agent, right, if you have a clause about appraisal, it's not going back and finding which way to write that. It's already there, it's the same verbiage every time, you know how to explain it, you know what it covers, there's not room for confusion of, did I write from sale price to appraised value, or did I write from list price to appraised value? It's standard across the board. You're not having those sort of mind gaps when you're just writing an offer. So, all right, we're gonna jump in. For people who don't know how to get to Transaction Desk, you go to your tools, and then it is right there, and it'll open up a new tab. Okay, so you will see that this is my dashboard, or actually it's the team's dashboard. And it might look different than yours when you open it up. You're very welcome to do this along with me. This is for sure a workshop style class. The way that you edit your dashboard is by pressing this unlock button, and then you can pull these little widgets down. And so
don't go too fast. You press what?
This unlock button.
The unlock button.
Yep.
Okay.
And then you can pull these widgets down, and so then there's sort of just like smart links for you to click on it. So I sorry, just moving my Zoom thing. We usually have our contacts because we might need to create a new contact. The one we use most often is create a transaction. I have templates in here. If I'm gonna edit a template, then I have just a quick link to do that. And then I have the whole list of the transactions that we're working on. So all of these are either appointments that we've been on or current files that are pending, but it's a quick, click into that one. I don't have to go to my home and then search for the transaction that is already created. But like I said, the one that we're using probably most often and for sure in this class are the creative transaction and creative template. The other one that I threw up here is Authentisign. If you use that as your signing tool, I would put enough that design legit on your homepage.
Is that contacts one up in that line, up at the top?
Yep.
Because I don't see it on mine. I see, I mean, I see the templates one, and,
Are you using the arrow to go side to side? See how she's.
okay, so there's probably more that can't be seen.
Right.
Yep. I think since I already have it down, it's not there, maybe? Or it's create contact and it looks like people's heads.
Well, I can show you. Oh, it's the create?
Yep.
The create one is the contacts?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So the first thing we're gonna do is work on our templates. And so we're gonna pretend for this one that this is a buyer consult template, going on a buyer consultation. First thing you're gonna do is create a transaction. Oh, sorry, never mind. We're gonna work on the template, not the actual person. We're gonna create a template. And I'm not actually gonna press that because I already have transaction templates, but we'll do it together. We're gonna do, if you click on that create a template button, it should pull you up to this screen. Or you can go to settings, and then it's transaction templates. You're gonna press the add button over here. And then you can name it whatever you want. You might have some that come pre-populated. I think the office makes them for us. I usually start it with, I started with Team Lucky Duck, but you can start it with just like buyer docs, buyer consult, paperwork, whatever you'd like to do. And then from there, you don't need a type. You could, if you wanted to do residential sale. And if you wanted a description, you sure could have one. Those aren't required fields. The only thing is name, so you can just do buyer docs.
So then you click the update button and it creates a template.
Right, so this one's saved. So this one is ours. And the piece that we're gonna work on is forms, making sure that your forms in your template are there and the right ones. So we are going to add these 4 forms. When we go on a buyer consult and Team Lucky Duck, we have people sign agency, buyer rep, additional disclosures in the affiliated business, so those 4 forms. Then they're already done and you don't have to do it at the purchase agreement stage.
So if mine's empty, I'm gonna hit add and then add those.
Yep, so then we're gonna do the plus button, yep. And I wrote them out over here, so when you search, start with the abbreviation, because the buyer rep, we use the KWPR version because it allows us to add in the PAC. If you just use the one from the board, there's no spot to add that PAC as an additional line item. So you can search.
So I have to go into that folder to access that particular one, right?
You can, or you can just search up at the top. So like I did agency, just add.
Sorry, text is small. MNAR, is that right?
And then dash agency for that one. And then the buyer rep is the KWPR. Pops up, the KWs periods.
Yeah, that. And the next one is what?
The KWPR buyer representation, usually we're looking at the exclusive.
So you have the folder open here, but
I'm just searching in the search bar, but you sure could go to the folder and grab it from there. But I wrote them all over here so that we can just search by
I
that.
want to make sure I can find what you're.
Yeah.
She's the whitelist.
So they're all listed out here that you would want in your buyer consult. So if you search by those.
Fire up exclusive, the other two, right? The two addendums, right? The affiliated, or the school, all right. Got them in.
Good, okay. So once we have these 4 forms in our fire consult folder for the transaction template, then when within this screen, the transaction template screen, you can go in and edit these forms. And then when you go to use this template, those items that you've already pre-populated will be
The only thing that'll add then is the contacts. Everything else that you put into that will be automatically populated, right?
right, you'll need to add the terms,
Right.
But some things you can pre-populate. So you'll notice the dates are not pre-populated, the buyer's not. Again, the dates of the contract are not pre-populated. This is the buyer rep. However, our compensation information is pre-populated.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Now, I've gone in and done this, so I know that agents fill out buyer rep contracts a little bit differently. So however you typically fill this out is what you would want here. So I have ours as an example.
Is that what you put per MLS?
That's what we put. I don't know if Melissa, if she's on, if she would recommend that for everybody, but that's what we.
Well, Jessica can answer that question. Jessica, is that what we're supposed to be doing?
For what?
Putting in the per MLS in the broker
Just
compensation?
saying they could copy them out of the offices templates that they already have. They could pull the buyer rep out of the template that the office has.
Okay.
And then they're filled out how the office wants them. Yeah, so, yeah.
So what are we putting in there?
So for instead of just KWPR buyer rep pulling them from, but can you pull them from another template?
You'd have to like copy it.
Yeah.
And then you'd have to create your own.
Yeah, so what?
Melissa is on. And
Alright,
from a brokerage perspective, since that commission is shared with the brokerage, we're looking to get 2.7%. But we recognize that there are definitely variable rates of commission that are offered, especially in some of the more outlying regions that we work in. And I also recognize that there aren't a lot of buyer agent reps who will go after your buyers for that difference, whether it be 0.2% or 0.7%. So I'm willing to be flexible on it, but the brokerage's standard is we would like you to be educating your buyers that we expect to be paid 2.7% in the transaction.
thank you,
No problem.
that's helpful. But then the reason why we're using the KWPR version is because it has this spot that says plus $4.99. And so that's important because that gives you a chance at the buyer consult, and it's an additional point in the paperwork that you're disclosing that BAC. So you're also gonna disclose it on the compensation disclosure when they write the offer, but you have 2 spots for it.
So once you fill out all the specifics that you want in this document, you save it just like you would normally do, right? And then this thing will populate when you pull it over to your client's side.
Correct, yep,
Right.
and we'll do that, we'll do an example so you can see it.
And it's important to note, these are only good for 2 more weeks.
Why is
Because
that?
August 1st new forms
They're
come
in
out.
there, yeah.
So we'll do another class in August, but we'll pull in all the new forms.
And that's a quick one. They'll just end up having an exclamation point.
The process is still the same.
Yes.
We just gonna change
The forms that
the
have
form in the template.
Yep. And it's not all forms that change, it's just,
just ones that.
So how do we know which one? Is it gonna be the revision number that's different on the?
it has a red exclamation point next to it. And if you try to use it, it won't let you. So then it says you need to replace it. So then I go grab the new one, put it in there, and then I'll delete the one with the red exclamation.
Oh, got it.
But she's gonna have another class on that, so.
Yeah, I told Victoria I'm happy to do part 2 when the new forms come out and we can
Alright.
switch them all out for
Perfect.
the forms. So, yep, you can fill out this area. I made a little cheat sheet of what you might want to pre-populate, so the compensation information down here, which type of properties this fire rep would apply to, as well as the closing direction if
Do you always have that checked automatically, directing to closing?
we do, but that doesn't mean we don't talk about it during the buyer consult. So when we're doing the buyer consult, it's checked, but if somebody wants to change that,
Initial
we
it,
can just
change the
cross
box.
it out and initial it.
Okay.
Yep, and so that is there. And then, again, dual agency, we usually have that checked, explain what it is, and if people don't feel comfortable with that, then we can go ahead and change it at the time of the buyer consult. The idea of having it more things marked than not is that I don't want to miss something. I don't want a checkbox to not get checked. I feel very confident that all of our agents on our team are in the script for the buyer consult and they're touching these bases. But sometimes, when you're talking and signing and handing them, if the box isn't already checked that you talked about, it might get messed in the sort of crossfire. So that we usually mark and then adjust if need be. You can add any others, and then obviously you're gonna have your agent sign drafted. So for the buyer consult template, this is really the only form that you would have anything to pre-populate. Additional disclosures as needed, ability of assessment agency obviously is just those signatures. So that's pretty easy, and then you can just save it, and then whenever you create a new transaction, you just apply this template. We'll do that later on, so you can see how it actually would work.
So you're just gonna close this now. It's been saved, you close it.
Saved, and then we close it. Yeah. So now we're back in our transaction templates. We're still in the buyer doc one. Go to settings, then transaction templates again. You'll get back to kind of your home screen of templates. Next one we're gonna work on is our listing packet.
Okay, so in order to get out of this, you clicked on what?
So,
Because I'm in buyer's docs.
Yeah.
We created this folder for
Yeah.
it, right?
so click on this little gear
The gears.
and then click transaction templates, and then you'll get back to the home screen for transaction templates. Okay, we're gonna work on the listing packet next, and see, mine is down here. First thing we're gonna do is add our forms. Mine are already in here, but we're gonna do the same process where we click the plus button. You can search, and I have the list of everything that you'd want, or everything that I put in my listing folder.
So we're we're creating an ad again, and then you're naming it listing docs?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Just to show the other place.
So I'm not 100% sure. So, okay, so Jessica has told us, thank you, Jessica, that we could press copy from the listing paperwork that the office puts into our folders. So if we press copy, you'll get just one that's gonna be called copy. You can press create. And then the paperwork should, let's see, here we go. The forms should automatically be in there for you. So you won't have to hunt and peck and get them. All the ones that are over here, you can use what the office already has in there for us, which is super nice. And then just edit your pre-populated fields that you would like. This might not have exactly the same ones that I have up here, but it would be pretty darn close. So, everybody following?
Yes.
Good so
So
far?
we have all those, we're gonna be populating all of those forms into this into this template.
Yep.
And when you go to print this,
Mhm.
all of those forms will be printed as the packet.
Right, so you'll create it, so if you're going on a listing appointment, right, you're gonna find the address, and then you're going to have to still make a transaction with that address. You'll apply this template, and so that will allow some of those static fields that will go through to already be there when you're filling out that paperwork. So it's not gonna know the square footage of the home or the bedrooms or
No.
anything like that, but it will know what you charge and, how you run it, those 4 boxes that you check on the listing contract. So let's jump into that. So here are fields that we pre-populate. In a listing contract, you can go ahead and look through it. This isn't gonna be, hold on, just pretend we're at the same place. I'm just gonna get to mine that already has it pre-populated so that you can see what we write. And which items we pre-populate. So again, no names, no addresses, no dates, right? That will all come later when you're actually working on a transaction. This is just your template. So the terms that a seller will accept, we write in here cash and financing. I know a lot of people write cash, conventional financing, FHA, VA, whatever you'd like to, however you normally fill out your listing contract, you can do that. And then these 4 options, we fill this out the same way every time. And so those are pre-populated for us. If you change that or you don't want to, you sure don't have to. But that's how we fill out these options. And so that's just already taken care of for us when we go to do the paperwork for a listing contract.
So you do the automated validation as a no.
We do. So we do yes, yes, no, no. The idea is that if we can control it, which, Zillow and third-party sites don't.
I do that too, but then I heard someone say that if we don't do yes, like it may not display on certain sites. Has anyone else heard that?
I had the number 3 checked no, and Zillow wouldn't put my listing on Zillow.
Oh, really?
And the client was super irritated, and then I was like, okay, so then Zillow's like, yeah, well, if you change that, then we'll do that. I'm like, are you kidding me?
For heaven's sakes.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I heard too, is when I start checking yes.
Yeah, right. So however you check, it would be just fine. We haven't run into that issue, so I'll probably keep checking no, or our team will probably keep checking no until we get, told we have to check yes.
So your client starts yelling at you.
Oh, you're doing great. I'm just trying to get a grip on all of these forms you're putting in these templates. Because once they get put in there, then you have to edit each one of these according to the standard that you're normally using. Right?
Yeah, so the idea is that if you pre-populate some of these that you do every single, right, when you normally go to prep for a listing, you would have to fill out everything. So the idea is if you fill out some things the same every time, why not pre-populate those into a template? And then you only have to fill out the specifics about that deal, whether it's listing, purchase agreement, those buyers, whatever it is. You're taking your time from checking 200 lines and marking those things as you do every single time to only marking the terms of the agreement. And so you're taking your time and kind of saving it when you're writing contracts.
Yep.
Okay, we don't typically list homes that are for lease. Obviously, when you're on the listing appointment, if this is different, you would mark it accordingly and initial, but we typically have that marked for our agents. Compensation is, we typically charge the same on every listing, and so that's pre-populated for us. Again, if there's some sort of situation, it's, Corey's father-in-law who's selling the property and Corey's gonna cover that BAC or something, you would just cross it out and initial it during the listing appointment. But typically we leave our compensation as a pre-populated field. 134 is a line that you can pre-populate. Most people do that pretty consistently. How long are you gonna hold somebody to listing contract after it's canceled? Ours
Okay.
is 0, but I know a lot of people do that differently.
Okay, so I'm just making sure I'm not here. I'm still trying to populate everything and put all this information in. So
Yeah.
when you're in line 124, you are putting 0 days in there.
134. That's how we fill out listing contracts. Now, people do that differently, right?
180.
Yeah,
So it's
so
up to you.
it's definitely up to you. How long do you typically, or what do you typically right there? How long will you hold somebody to listing contract after it's canceled? If they were to sell afterwards. So, compensation disclosure, typically, we're offering 2.7. So we repopulate that. Only if we're, selling in a different market or something, does that really get changed? Office wants us to offer 2.7. Again, the direction regarding the closing, and again, if that needs to change, we are happy to change it, no skin off our back to work with a different title company than the one we recommend, but we just pre-populate that. 178, sellers is the FERPA clause, whether a seller is a foreign person or not. And we have this checked is not. I will tell you that every agent on our team asks this question because we have had situations where we have represented foreign persons on the sell side, and we have had buyers who are buying a home that has had a foreign person on the sell side, and the tax implications are so what'd you say, Carly?
Significant.
30%.
Significant, yes, significant that like you wanna have this conversation on the front end. So we do pre-populate it. 99% of our sellers are not a foreign person. But if there's any question about that, you might just wanna take it out before you print so that you can remind yourself to have that conversation. Because if they are selling as a foreign person, it is a large tax liability. In most cases, and we're not attorneys, or tax people, we can't explain that. However, you wanna give them the advice to have that conversation. And so that they know when you present that estimate of net proceeds, that that's going to be different and affected by their status.
Because I had that happen once.
Yeah.
He had said that he was not a foreign person, but actually he'd been in the US for 30 years and had a card.
Yeah.
And then when you went to title said, you're not a US citizen. Of course, then all those numbers changed,
Yes.
right? So that might be not a bad idea to have. We're told not to fill that out, but to have them do that, right?
Yep.
So you're suggesting to check it, and that way, by default, you're using it as a baseline for safety, right?
Yeah, well, and that's if we're representing the seller, right? You're having a very in-depth conversation with them at the listing appointment. This is coming up. We don't ever check the line on the purchase agreement regarding FERPA if we're representing the buyer, right?
Or the disclosure.
Or the disclosures, right? Obviously, we don't check anything on the disclosure. But if we're representing the buyer, we have no relationship with the seller, right? We're never checking that box. And in fact, it's not even sometimes we'll say like, oh yeah, it should be yes or no, and it's like, no, please have it marked appropriately and send it back to us, because we've had situations where, so if a seller has this situation, and they wanna close without having those funds withheld, the way that the laws in the United States work is that liability, that tax liability is passed to the buyer regardless of their status. And so it stays with the property. So that's why it becomes so sticky, especially if you represent the buyer in a situation where there's a foreign person seller. So anyways. We mark the box if people are open to dual agency. Again, if that doesn't, if they're not okay with that, we can just update it at the time of the listing appointment. And then signatures obviously are not pre-populated. Okay, next one in the listing, or in the listing folder that we work on is showing instructions. So you guys, I'm sure, love this form. It tells everybody I have a fantastic how to fill out showing time for you. You will see that I have some notes here that are pre-populated for every listing. I always want to be copied on me or Cassandra. And then we have our note about like the COVID stuff. So for a long time, it was like one showing in time, blah, 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 blah. Now it just says follow current COVID protocols. So if that changes at any point, we're just up to date there. So I just wanted to point out that you can, write some notes on here, and then it would be automatically.
Can I ask Jessica a question? You said something, well,
Go ahead.
this issue of the copy.
Yeah.
Within those documents. Is that the whole set in there?
Yes.
So I don't have to,
One by one. Like, right, how Kelly was going through and picking them all, you don't have to do that. If you copy that, you just want to make sure that it includes everything. Like once we update the forms, if there's a form that for some reason isn't updated in there, you'll have to update that.
right.
In the input form, you can pre-populate only a few things because most of this is house specific or property specific. But things like our compensation that we're offering to buyer's agents are there. You'll see we have list agent, Zach's always our listing agent, and then our team is here. And then I also decided to check these this year. We almost never work with foreclosures, lender-owned or short sales. And if it's a agent owner, that's obviously gonna stick out in my head or Sandra's head when we're prepping paperwork that, it's Cole's house, we need to switch that. And so I've pre-populated those this year to just try to save on many mistakes that the best may, have to send it back to paperwork for. So I think there's a few other auction, taxes are yearly, those sorts of things. But otherwise, most of this is very property specific, and so, you can't repopulate those things. Let's see, okay, so that's our listing packet. We're gonna save this. And then we're gonna get out of here. That's it. And then we'll take you back to the home page for the listing packet. Again, you want to go back to your templates on this year and then transaction templates. So let's see what we have for KWPR. Okay, so KWPR, the office puts one in here, that's purchase agreement and the buyer rep paperwork. So if you want to just use that, you can press copy. You'll see copy at the end and then create it. And then all of your forms should be in there. I'm gonna go into the one that I already have pre-populated so we can see what those items are.
You might wanna make like several of these, right? 'Cause we have one that's specific for conventional, specific for VA, specific for,
FHA.
so you could create 3 copies of it. And then if you're working with a conventional buyer, you can pick the conventional one, or if you're doing a land or whatever, so.
Yeah, so like if you do a lot of land deals, you might wanna make your own transaction template for that, or new construction or something like that. But we have the 3 offers that are conventional, FHA, and VA. And then when we're doing the pre-populated fields, you just mark those as you would with that kind of offer, if that makes sense. Our contract, our folder will have the buyer docs, just in case we haven't followed the normal process and already had them fill out buyer docs. You'll want to do that at the time of the purchase agreement, and so you'll want to have your buyer representation contract filled out the same way that you did in the buyer consult template folder, if that makes sense, right? You want to pre-populate those same fields for the one that's in here. Then the big one is the purchase agreement. Again, you won't be able to pre-populate any names, dates, addresses, those types of things, or the terms of the offer. But you will be able to populate things like the mortgage financing. And as Carly mentioned, we have templates for conventional FHA and VA. And so you'll see that this one is marked conventional. If you're not going to make 3 different transaction template folders, you might not want to mark that, right? Because then it will be a trigger to you to mark that appropriate to your client. But for us, we know this is a conventional buyer, and so I've gone ahead and had this already pre-populated.
Can I just pipe in for something?
Yeah.
So if you go up to that first page, there's a lot of things in here like legally described as, the address, all that kind of stuff. If you go into transaction desk and you go into the MLS and you choose the little icon for transaction desk under the picture, what that's going to do is you're using the wizard, and then it uploads everything from the MLS into the template that you are going to want to use. So when you think of it, you have this template filling out all the stuff that's always going to be the same. And then when you go to that listing, it's going to fill in everything else. So you really end up having very little that you have to fill in at the end.
We'll do it together
Okay,
at the end, so that I can show them how that
Perfect.
pulls together. It makes so it's literally just the terms and anything different regarding that transaction. So, okay, so mortgage financing. Again, this is how we fill it out. So it's the first mortgage. It doesn't include a bond form. Obviously, if they're doing Minnesota housing or something like that, they'll have to change that and address it. It's conventional, and we have in here market rate with rates changing so much that you might want to change that to, no more than 6.5 or something, if you know your buyer is going to be very sensitive if rates change drastically and won't be able to qualify, at a certain point. So that might be something that when I update on August 1st our forms, that might be something that doesn't get populated in the future. Whereas we lived in a time when rates weren't as volatile. And then we always check for a commitment letter, so that's always checked, and then you'll have to provide the date according to the close date and that sort of thing. We usually mark 117, although I've seen a few purchase agreements lately that have 116 marked because of how rates are moving, and so the idea is, we don't want to get further down the line and realize that somebody can't qualify. We want to know that first week within the 5 business days. Lender commitment orders, we always mark this as 0, and buyer agrees to pay the reinspection, should there be any. If we're doing an FHA or VA, or sorry, this is just FHA, you'd want to have your sale price in here. And then this is for FHA and VA, so you want to fill out this section as well. So this is one of the reasons we have 3 different templates, because this is not required for conventional. And I would say 90% of our team's transactions that other team members, not Carly, are preparing are conventional, but every once in a while they'll do a VA or an FHA, and then you have to remember to fill this part out. And so if we just have a template that they can select, it's already filled out for the most part for them, then we will hopefully have less errors. Any other notes? I don't ever mark anything for seller pays. We have inspection filled out as if they're having one, and sort of our typical turn time. I would say this is where we see the most changes if, based on the client's preferences. So whether or not we're having an inspection, whether or not it's contingent, and what that timeline is. But again, that's an easy change as you're talking to the client. We have number 3 marked for the sale contingency. Again, if they have to sell a home, you would have to adjust that. But we have it marked. Real estate taxes and assessments, we mark these the same every time, unless we're using, that we know that a seller has large assessment and we're using that as a negotiation tool that will take it on, then that would be adjusted, but again, that would be like an offhanded sort of situation. So typically, we have these filled out this way. Let's see. The additional provisions is not subject to a cancellation. Obviously, that would need to be adjusted if it is warranty deed. That might get updated if, it's in the state and you're gonna get a trustee's deed or that sort of thing. Possession, I have marked. Don't have anything marked for seller's disclosures, because I want them to, A, remember that they have to grab those and have the client sign them, and B, which one is it, and have that conversation with their buyers about alternatives, if it is an alternative. Disclosure. Water and sewer, we typically mark that it's city water and city sewer. I'd say maybe 30% of our deals have well and septic, and then we just edit that accordingly. No home warranty, we mark boxes for who represents who, and we have this marked does not, dual agency does not, especially if it's Keller Williams, right? They'd have to be somebody from our office. It's not like Edina where all Edina are together. So while we'd love to do every deal with somebody in this office, chances are they're from somewhere else. So we have it marked does not apply. Obviously, if we're doing a deal with somebody here, that needs to get updated, and then the buyers and sellers need to sign. We add in some clauses. Not everybody needs to do these, and I will talk to you about clauses that is a new feature for Transaction Desk. These are ones that we put in the template because we keep them in there probably 99% of the time, Carly. Until the spring, yes. So the first one is an appraisal clause, that's the second one is the appraisal clause. So FHA and VA have a appraisal clause just like written into the purchase agreement that it has to appraise the purchase price. Conventional doesn't, and so this is our way of saying if it doesn't appraise the purchase price, we have the buyers have the right to cancel and get their earnest money back. Not that they would necessarily, but it's in there and that protects everybody if we get a low appraisal. The other one, the top one, is about the inspection. So if you remember a few years back, the inspection contingency changed quite a bit, and it went from the idea of you go through the whole inspection timeline, and if there's no agreement, then the purchase agreement is canceled, to now where if you go through the whole timeline and nothing's agreed upon, the purchase agreement is in full effect and the buyer and the purchase agreement terms stand. So if you don't have an agreement, the buyer is locked in. So this is our attempt to say, if there's not an agreement, we're not moving forward. There needs to be an agreement at midnight on the day that the inspection contingency is up. And so, there's many times where you're negotiating, and then it's 10 o'clock on the night it's up, and we don't ever want our buyers to be locked if there's not been an agreement made. So that's what that one kind of gets at. Obviously, you remove those if they're not applicable to purchase agreement. Nothing else is pre-populated on the purchase agreement. And then within this folder, within these forms, the only other one that we really add any pre-populated information to is the comp disclosure, and you add the BAC. So that's an easy one, so that you don't ever, then it's on the buyer rep, it's on the seller's net sheet, and then it's also here on the compensation for the buyer, so. And then obviously you would fill in whatever is on the MLS up here. Okay. Any questions about transaction templates or how to pre-populate them so far? So now we've just made them hypothetically. The next thing I'm gonna go through is just clauses, so you can see how those work. And then we're going to do some like practice and see how they work in general. So, any questions on Zoom? Yes.
For the clause on the PA, I guess you're gonna go through that right now, but it'd be great just to have, yeah, this like a template of different clauses. So yeah,
Oh,
I guess I'm gonna go there. So I'm gonna be quiet now.
I have a question as well. Do you use the checklist feature?
In transaction desk?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't
Okay.
use the best one. Yes, I for sure will share our clauses, if you would like them. So, the other.
You're writing a PA, then you can see it.
Here it is. Okay, you go to your gear, which is like your settings thing, and then you're into clauses. You want to make personal clauses, and you're gonna do the add button at the top again. And I wrote the ones that we use. So this is an appraisal gap coverage clause, and so this basically would be the verbiage that you'd like to put into place if you want to enact this situation in a purchase agreement. And so the idea is you come in here and set up your clauses, right? And then when you're actually writing the PA, which we'll do in a moment, we can just insert a clause. So we don't have to, like I said, at 10:30 at night, when you're laying in bed writing a purchase agreement, try to remember how to write the appraisal gap coverage clause. You can just literally select it and it'll insert from the clause that you've pre-written and you have preloaded into your transaction desk. Again, from a team perspective, I love this because then all of our clauses are written the same and there's no questions about, whether the appraisal gap coverage says there's a bridging the gap between the list price and the contract sale price, or the appraised value and like it's very specific as to what is happening. And then
The office has some too,
okay,
I think.
yes, and then
Yeah.
you'll also see I have one in here for the inspection removal. I feel like I get this question a lot. It's just like, I just want it removed. What do we say for that again? It's like the inspection contingency is just hereby removed. So that's in there. So then it takes like 2 clicks, right? And then it's done. These are the ones we have. We have appraisal gap, escalation clause, inspection removal, appraisal contingency. You saw we just build that into our PA template, but it could certainly live here in a clause too. Are there any others that you
go
think
back and I think the office has full, you can see what they have in there already.
I don't think this is a
Never mind.
I think you want to build your own personal ones. So, you have any other ideas?
Could we get, like Monique was asking, could we
Yeah.
get like what they are, what you
Sure.
use? And then also maybe a copy of your PowerPoint
For sure,
to
yeah.
know what forms go in where?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And Melissa, I don't know if you want to look at those clauses first and approve them from the brokerage perspective before we, have everybody using them, or if you have some that you would prefer we use, just let me know.
I think you do an exceptional job and your team is very professional, so I trust them, but I do think it's a good idea for you to email them to me first.
Okay, sounds good, will do. Okay. All right, so here are our clauses. Obviously, I will share the verbiage with you. And then you can create your own, and then we're gonna write, we're gonna do some practices. So we are gonna go to our home, actually, we're gonna go to our dashboard, which is the top one that looks like some sort of clock thing, I don't know. And first, we're gonna do it in the order of what I would typically do. So Ryan is my husband, and we're gonna do a buyer consult and a listing appointment. Carly's gonna go and get him to buy a new house and sell our house.
Right.
Let's get it done. And then she's gonna take him out on the showing, and he's gonna purchase the house. So first, we're gonna do buyer doc forms for him. So we're gonna create a transaction, right? Every side of a transaction is a new transaction. So, and in this case, we're gonna do it in the right order. We're gonna do a buyer consult first. So he's gonna actually have 2 buyer folders in transaction desk. We could combine those, but the way that our templates are set up, we leave them separate. So we're gonna do, with a buyer, I always call it their name. Sorry, I can't really see anymore. I'm old now. And I'm trying to work on the screen without a monitor, so that becomes challenging. Okay, so whatever you called your new buyer consultation folder for your template is what you want to select here. So if you copied it from the KWPR one, it would be the KWPR buyer copy, right? That's the one you want to choose. So we're going to do buyer docs. We don't need to do anything about importing data because it's just buyer docs. He doesn't have a house to buy yet. And add me as the buyer agent is important too, because you're gonna rep this person. And in this case, we're logged in as Zach, and so Zach is gonna be the buyer's agent. Okay, we're gonna create it.
We're imitating.
Yes, see, the first thing you want to do is add your contact, right? So we have Zach already in here because we added me, as the buyer's agent, and the office already pre-populates because Zach holds his license here. So we add, and we're going to do a new transaction contact because this is the first time we're doing Ryan. And we're going to select that he's the buyer, and his first name. Ryan. And you can add as much information as you want. You don't have to. The only thing that's required is his name, and then his name will pre-populate on those forms. If you use Authentisign to sign, you probably want to add their email. Do we, as an office, do we teach people to use Authentisign or DocuSign?
Authentisign.
Okay, so then you probably want to add their email.
Yes. If you don't add the email, you won't be able to have them sign it digitally, so. You want to do that.
Save. That's really all we need. Obviously, you know, if they're married, traditionally you'd add a spouse, but in this case, we're just going this way. Now if we go to our form folder, all of the forms that you have in your consult template will be here. And when we go to open up the buyer wrap, those pre-populated pieces will already appear. And now you'll notice that Ryan's name already appears as well. And then where the agent is, Zach already appears too in the office. So really, for a buyer rep, I have to do the date, and then how long I'm gonna, how long we're gonna be in contract with one another. And so, other than that, there's really nothing to fill out anymore on this document for buyer consult. We're gonna go ahead and save it. Out of here. Most of our buyer consults are in person, and so we'll just take all of the forms that are in here, put them into our little basket, and then we'll print them out. And then Carly can go on the appointment and have Brian sign. So now we have Brian under contract for the buy. We also are going to sell his house, our house, And to do this, I'm gonna cheat. Do you teach people this way
Well,
to use the old listing?
oh, no,
No, okay. Well, I'm gonna show you the way I do it, and if it's not allowed, just.
I do that too with the old one, but then sometimes it brings in old info that you
Yes.
need to
Brings
change
in
Like the
anyway.
dates
realtor
come in,
information and
yeah.
all that.
So
So like some of the
My
cycles move after.
take on it is it's easier to like spot some of the stuff that's wrong and take it out
Yeah.
than like copying the legal address and all that
Right.
stuff. So I usually cheat if we can, and I go to the old listing. And so, we'll see, it's closed out on the MLS, it's an old listing. Now, sometimes you won't have an old listing to work from, and that's fine too, right? But, because there is one, if I click on Instinet from the old listing, it will pre-populate some of the house-specific things, not everything, but things like the legal address, what county it's in, what school district it's in, those sorts of things. And so you'll see, Transaction Desk automatically gives it the address as the name of this transaction, which I actually like, right, because I named his buyer docs, his name. Now this is the property that we're gonna sell, that's the property address. And we're gonna select our template that we created for a listing package, right, for a listing appointment. And so again, if you copied it from the office, KWPR listing, and then copy, that's the one you wanna select. It will automatically include that it's importing data from the old listing.
so this part is where I go into North Star data and I pick the other one. And it is, what's the drop down right there? And up there, yeah. I do, the other one, Realist.
Yeah.
And we do it with the property ID, so then it brings in that, it brings in the
Yes.
tax and all that
Yeah.
stuff, so.
Totally. So if there's not an old listing, I always do this.
I've never done this, so the tax doesn't usually correct,
That's
pulling
good.
from there?
Yeah, the tax.
It'll pull it.
Yeah.
So you could do either, I don't know that one's like better than the other, but this is the way that
But you do have to be careful not to miss information.
you do have to be careful to like take out other
So that's
stuff.
why for new agents, I don't even tell them that, because then they have to just
They'll
put the new
leave
stuff in.
old agent's information.
Right,
Yes.
because sometimes I do leave that in there and all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, that's
Who's
not
this?
me.
That's
That's the old person, delete it out.
Yeah. So that's the first thing I do is go to contacts, just like I did for the buyer consult. Go to contacts and I delete all, everybody except for me, which in this case I'm Zach. And the office, right? And we're the sellers side. I'm gonna add my client, and now I'm gonna choose an existing contact in there. Okay, mark him. Add him, this time I'm gonna change him to seller, right, because we're doing a listing. I'll go to my forms. And it's the beauty of using both an old listing or realist and our transaction template is that much of this is going to be already filled out. You will see that, like Jessica was saying, there are some old things. So I have to delete those out, right? We're not using the old price or the old contract dates. But now I can just fill in my contract dates, the price, or, leave it blank until we get to the appointment and try to put that in. I'm just realizing we're way over on time. I'm so sorry if people have to go. You're very welcome to. And then the rest of it is already pre-populated from the template. So, the input form and things like that, you will always have to fill that out as usual. Don't have to, there's no way to import that, the room dimensions or how many beds and baths and square feet and that sort of thing. You'll have to fill that out. Okay, we're gonna write an offer. Sorry that we're so over, sorry Jessica. Right. Okay, so again, like we did with the listing, we're gonna select transaction desk from the MLS. So we're gonna go right from this page into the MLS, and it'll pre-populate the property information for us for this house. Okay, we're gonna use a template. We're gonna Ryan is a conventional buyer, so I'm gonna use that. If you copied it from the office, it'd be KWPR, purchase agreement and buyer docs copy, is the one that we worked on. And then you'll see is importing from the MLS the information about the property. We're gonna create it. Hopefully create it. Okay, first thing I'm gonna do is go to my contacts again. I'm gonna add my buyer, which we already have them in here. So he signed buyer rep already with us. Add him. He's gonna stay as buyer this time. All right, we're gonna go to our forms. Go to our purchase agreement, since you already signed buyer rep. And date it. These names should already be there. We're gonna put in earnest money. We're gonna put in our terms, right? Anything that we don't write anything in these boxes, but if you do that, we're gonna offer 600,000, 20%, 80%. And close the end of August. All these pieces can stay the same. Because this is a traditional, conventional offer. We're gonna do a commitment letter 1 week before closing. Otherwise, all set. Nothing else. We're not gonna ask for seller pays. We're gonna leave our inspection in as it's written. All of these are already marked for us because we're using our template. We have a seller's disclosure, blah, 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 blah. You'll notice that the listing agent gets pulled in too, which is nice. This is one of Chad's listings. In this case, because it was Zach and Chad, we have to adjust this dual agency. And also we have to adjust that they're dual agents here. Okay, we are not gonna have an appraisal or we're gonna keep the inspection one, but we're not gonna have an appraisal guarantee. In fact, we're gonna add a appraisal gap. No, we're gonna add a clause, and then you'll see my personal clauses are already here.
Is that drop down box you created off the other? How did that box, does that automatically open like that?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's just there.
That's new?
That's new. Yep, so this is the clauses thing. So remember we created some, and so now I can just go in here and pick whatever I want to add to the purchase agreement. And so this one says, should the home appraise between contract sale price, buyer will bring cash up to, and we're gonna say $10,000 to bridge a gap between the list price and the contract sale price. So obviously we still have to write their terms, but the verbiage is already there. We're not searching for what we wrote on the last time we did an appraisal gap, that sort of thing. And then we can just add it in. Rest of this, you'll see names populate. Otherwise, basically, your purchase agreement written in a very short amount of time once you have terms from your clients. Obviously, you have to do the rest of the paperwork too, and then you can put them all into your basket. And then it's done for signing. If they're gonna sign electronically or print it out and present the offer and have them sign. I'm sorry, we are over on time. Can I answer any questions?
Thank you.
No
Thank you.
problem. I'm at the end of the hallway. I'm here 7:30 to 3:30 every day. Sandra is here from 8:30 to 5 every day. We are always happy to help, and especially with this kind of stuff, it's our wheelhouse. So stop by if you need something, or are doing it for the first time, or get into a situation where you have questions. Thank you. No problem.
I only had about a third of all of that, so